Today, we're diving into a case that started in a quiet Arizona neighborhood and just exploded into this high-tech criminal investigation that has the whole nation's attention. This is the unfolding story of the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. And that's the plea from Nancy's daughter, the journalist Savannah Guthrie. That message just cuts right to the heart of this whole mystery. It's about a family that just wants their mom back home, safe. So to really get our heads around this case, we're going to break it down into 6 key parts. We'll start with who Nancy Guthrie is and the night she vanished. Then we'll look at the crime scene, the digital clues, and this really modern threat, deepfakes. And finally, we'll cover the family's plea and the huge questions that are still hanging out there. All right, so let's start with the most important piece of this whole puzzle. Who exactly is Nancy Guthrie? Because before she was a headline, she was a mom, a neighbor, just living her life out in Arizona. What you really need to understand about Nancy is this mix of strength and, well, vulnerability. At 84, she was still sharp, totally independent, living on her own. But she also had limited mobility, and she relied on daily medication for a chronic condition. And that last part, that's what made her disappearance an immediate life or death situation. Okay, this timeline is absolutely crucial. So she's last seen on January 31st. Then, in the middle of the night, a couple of really weird things happen. First, at 1:47 a.m., boom, her doorbell camera goes offline. Then, just 41 minutes after that, her pacemaker app disconnects from her phone. I mean, these don't feel like random glitches, right? They feel deliberate, like someone was covering their tracks, hours before anyone even knew she was gone. And this brings us right to the crime scene itself. What started as a simple check-in on a missing person, it turned into a massive criminal investigation the second police walked through her front door. Yeah, from the very beginning, investigators knew this wasn't someone who had just wandered off. The physical evidence they found was screaming one thing. This was a violent abduction. And their concerns were based on some pretty clear and frankly chilling evidence. They found bloodstains right at the entrance. And yes, DNA confirmed it was Nancy's. Her doorbell camera wasn't just off, it had been physically ripped out. And all of her essential stuff, like her phone, was just left there. There was absolutely no sign she left on her own. Sheriff Chris Nanos really drove this point home. He said flat out that authorities believe she was taken, and he pointed out her physical limitations to show just how impossible it would have been for her to leave voluntarily. Like he said, she just couldn't have walked away. Now, this is where the case takes a very 21st century turn. We're getting into the digital world, where the trail of clues is, well, it's just as confusing as it is revealing. So almost right away, these ransom notes start showing up, sent straight to the media. They're demanding millions in Bitcoin. And, this is the key part, they had specific details about Nancy's house, which made them seem kind of credible. But the authorities have been super careful, and they have not confirmed if these are real or just some cruel hoaxes. But then came probably the single biggest break in the case. Even though the actual camera was gone, the FBI was able to recover what they call residual data from the cloud. Think of it like digital ghosts of images that were uploaded right before the camera was destroyed. And those images, they show a person, masked, gloved, carrying a backpack, and possibly armed, right there at her door. This is our only look at a possible suspect. So this investigation isn't just about traditional detective work, fingerprints and footprints. It's also running headfirst into a uniquely modern problem, the power of artificial intelligence to create absolute deception. So what are we talking about here? A deepfake is basically synthetic media. Using AI, someone can create a totally fake video of a person saying something they never did. Or they can clone their voice so perfectly that it's almost impossible to tell it's not real. It's a scarily powerful tool for deception. And this is the huge challenge for the family. In the old days, getting proof of life was pretty simple. You get a photo of the person holding today's newspaper. But now, how can you possibly trust a video or a voice message when you know AI can fake it so well? This technology just throws a massive wrench into the most important part of any negotiation, knowing for sure that the person you're trying to save is actually alive. And this is the exact reality the Guthrie family is facing. In one of her public pleas, Savannah talked about this directly. They were desperate to talk, but they needed real, verifiable proof that their mother was alive. And that's a task that's become so much harder because of this technology. So, as all these technological and investigative complexities were swirling, the family's public pleas brought a very raw, very human focus back to the case, and it completely captured the attention of the whole country. In a direct video message, Savannah Guthrie and her siblings spoke right to the captors. They said they got a message, and they made it crystal clear they were willing to pay. It was just this direct, desperate appeal, hoping the person holding their mom had even a shred of humanity left. And believe me, the nation was watching. To give you some perspective on the public interest here, in just the first week of February, the Wikipedia page for this case had almost 850,000 views. To put that in context, that's nearly half the traffic for the Winter Olympics, which were going on at the exact same time. This was way more than a local story. It had become a national obsession. And that attention went all the way to the very top. The White House was sharing information on social media. President Donald Trump personally called Savannah to offer the full backing of federal resources. With the FBI and Border Protection already on board, this case was getting the absolute highest level of law enforcement priority. Which brings us to where things stand right now, because despite all this attention, despite the intense investigation, the heart of this case is still just a painful, agonizing mystery. First and foremost, who is this person? Is this the abductor, an accomplice? We just don't know. This grainy image is the single most important clue they have, and for now, it's a dead end. And then you have the ransom notes. Are they a real way to communicate with whoever has Nancy Guthrie? Or are they just a cruel distraction designed to mislead everyone at the worst possible time? The answer to that could change everything. And finally, we're left with the one question that just overshadows everything else. It's the question her family is living with every single second of every day. Weeks after she was taken from her home, the only question that truly matters is still unanswered. Where is Nancy Guthrie?